Ready to dive into something that might just turn your whole view of economics upside down?
I'm in. Let's do it.
All right, so today we're tackling the relative theory of money, RTM for short, from this book here, Theory Relative de la Monnaie.pdf by Stéphane Laborde. It's a real head-scratcher, but in a good way, you know.
Oh, yeah. This isn't your typical economics deep dive.
Right. So where do we even begin? I guess with the fact that this RTM, it isn't really about, like, crunching numbers and predicting markets. It's more about
freedom.
Exactly. Individual economic freedom. Laborde lays out these 4 core economic freedoms that he says are central to the whole thing.
Yeah, the freedom to choose your own monetary system, access resources however you need to. And the freedom to create and value things in the economy, and then, of course, to exchange them and determine prices.
It's like he's saying, look, economics shouldn't just be about some top-down control. It should empower individuals, you know?
Absolutely. And one of the most fascinating things about RTM is how it challenges this idea that, economic value is this fixed, objective thing.
Yeah, like there's one true price for everything.
Right. RTM throws that out of the window and says, no, value is relative. It all depends on your individual perspective. Think about how differently people value a piece of art. Something that might seem priceless to one person, someone else might think it's just, okay.
So like one person's trash is another person's treasure.
Exactly. And RTM suggests that this subjectivity of value isn't a problem to be solved, but actually a fundamental part of how economics works.
Okay, so forget those price tags. Forget trying to find one universal measure of value. It's all relative. Your perspective, my perspective, it all matters.
And that's such a different way of looking at it than, traditional economic models. They often rely on these objective measures like GDP or inflation rates. But RTM is saying, hold on, let's not forget about the individual, their subjective experience within the system.
And this whole idea of value being relative, it ties directly into another big concept in RTM, the universal dividend.
Ah, yes. The universal dividend, or UD, it's like the heart and soul of RTM. Imagine this. Every citizen in a society receiving a regular payment, a dividend, just for being part of the system.
Wait, so like everyone gets a paycheck even if they don't have a job? That's a pretty radical idea.
It is radical. But it makes sense in the context of RTM. Think of it this way. If we acknowledge that economic value is created collectively by everyone in a society, shouldn't everyone share in the benefits? The UD is essentially saying, you're a citizen, you're part of this economic zone, you deserve a share of the value that we're all creating together.
So instead of money mainly being created through debt, which is how it mostly works now, RTM proposes we could create money as a way to represent this shared ownership we all have in the economy.
Yeah, it's a completely different way of thinking about money and where it comes from.
And Laborde, he doesn't just throw this idea out there, does he? Doesn't he actually give like concrete examples and calculations?
Oh, absolutely. He gets really into the weeds, which I love. For example, he estimated that back in 2010, a family of 4 in the Eurozone, they could have received a universal dividend of somewhere between 552 to 928 euros every single month.
Wow, that's a significant chunk of change. Okay, but are there any real-world examples of something like a UD in action?
There are. They might not be perfect examples of RTM in practice, but Laborde points to places like Alaska with their permanent fund dividend, which comes from oil revenue.
Right, I've heard of that.
And there's Namibia, which has a basic income grant, and even Brazil's Bolsa Familia program. These aren't exactly the same as the RTM universal dividend, but they show that the concept of, sharing a nation's wealth with its citizens, it's not entirely out there.
Yeah, it's not just some pie-in-the-sky idea. Some countries are trying stuff out, seeing what works. Yeah. So we've talked about the upsides, but RTM isn't afraid to point out potential problems with our current economic systems, is it? Like with all this debt we keep racking up.
Definitely not. And one concept that Laborde highlights that I find really interesting is what he calls psychological resonance.
Psychological resonance.
Yeah, it's like this. Imagine the central bank. They hint that they're going to make a big investment in some sector, let's say, green energy. Now, people hear that and they're thinking, ooh, I don't want to miss out. I got to get in on that.
FOMO, right. Fear of missing out.
Exactly. And so everyone starts pouring money into green energy, not necessarily because it's the most sound investment, but because everyone else is doing it. And boom, you've got yourself a bubble.
Ah, so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But maybe not with the best outcome in the end.
Right, and Laborde's point is that this kind of centralized control over money creation, often based on debt, it can create these imbalances and lead to instability in the long run.
And he backs this up with historical examples too, right?
He does. He talks about the gold and silver bubbles, for example, these periods of history where the price of gold or silver went through the roof, but it wasn't really based on like actual value. It was more about speculation and, that psychological resonance we were just talking about.
Which kind of makes you question this whole idea of economic growth, right? Like, we're always so focused on GDP, but is that really an accurate measure of how well we're doing?
Right. Is it real growth or just a bubble about to burst?
Yeah.
Yeah. It really makes you think twice about just chasing those GDP numbers.
So, speaking of alternatives, how does RTM view these newfangled currencies and blockchain technologies popping up, especially with all this talk about transparency and fairness,
Well, it's interesting you should mention those, because the whole ethos of something like Bitcoin, being decentralized, open source, it does seem to resonate with RTM's call for money systems that aren't controlled by like a single entity.
Okay, I see the connection there. But Bitcoin has its limitations, right? Doesn't RTM kind of clash with the whole idea of a fixed supply, especially with the universal dividend in the mix?
You're right on the money there. While that decentralized nature of Bitcoin is appealing, that fixed supply could actually become a problem down the line. Think about it. As more people use it, that limited supply could actually lead to deflation. And that could really throw a wrench in the works of, a healthy economy.
So it's like a digital gold rush. The early birds get the goodies, but everyone else is left.
Struggling to catch up. Laborde actually uses the term temporal pyramid to describe this, where the early adopters benefit disproportionately, leaving latecomers in a tough spot.
Right. It's all about timing. So if RTM isn't just about pointing fingers at what's wrong with the system, what solutions does it offer?
Well, one exciting example Laborde brings up is this thing called the OpenUDC project.
OpenUDC. Okay.
It's this open source initiative taking cues from RTM with the aim of creating free currencies that actually bake in these universal dividend principles we've been talking about. It's like they're taking this theoretical framework and saying, okay, how do we turn this into a real world digital currency that people can actually use? It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about the potential impact.
It's like they're trying to build the plane while they're flying it.
Something like that, yeah.
It's great to see people actually trying to make the stuff happen, pushing the envelope, But let's go back to this idea of economic growth for a second. It's important to clarify, RTM isn't saying all growth is bad, is it?
Not at all.
No.
It's not about slamming the brakes on progress or anything. RTM is more about questioning whether our current obsession with GDP as the ultimate measure of success is, really giving us the full picture.
It's like we're so focused on making the numbers go up, we forget to ask if it's actually making our lives any better.
Exactly. RTM suggests that we need to redefine what growth really means. It's not just about producing more stuff, it's about increasing well-being, social justice, and of course that individual economic freedom we keep coming back to. It's about a more holistic approach, looking at the bigger picture.
So instead of just asking, how much stuff did we make? We should be asking, what kind of world are we creating with all this stuff?
Now you're getting it. Do we want growth that just benefits a select few, or growth that lifts everyone up and takes care of the planet in the process?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And with everything going on in the world right now, inequality, climate change, all the economic uncertainty, this question of what kind of growth we're striving for, it's more important than ever.
Absolutely. So beyond the big picture stuff, how does RTM actually play out in the nitty-gritty details? Like, how would a universal dividend system actually work in practice?
Well, Laborde gets really into the weeds there. He provides all these detailed calculations and models, exploring this complex relationship between money supply, population growth, and finding that sweet spot for the universal dividend rate. He even delves into historical data, examining how different monetary systems have performed in the past.
It's like some heavy reading.
It can be, yeah, but it's fascinating stuff. And it's not just for economists and mathematicians. There are practical takeaways for everyone.
So what's the key takeaway for the average person?
At its core, RTM encourages us to think critically about money, to question the systems that are already in place and explore alternatives, to demand more transparency, more fairness. It's about reclaiming our economic freedom.
It's about not settling for the status quo.
Exactly. Don't just accept things as they are. Get involved. Now, to be fair, Laborde acknowledges that implementing a system like this wouldn't happen overnight. He outlines different approaches, from simple to more progressive, for transitioning to a universal dividend system. He even suggests ways to integrate it into existing social welfare programs.
So it's about finding a realistic path forward. It's not about tearing down the whole system, but letting it evolve in a way that incorporates these principles of fairness and individual economic empowerment.
Precisely. Think of RTM as a roadmap, not a set of handcuffs. It provides a framework, but it leaves room for adaptation, for experimentation.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Freedom, alternative currencies, debt. What about the whole debt aspect of things, especially in relation to the universal dividend?
That's a really important point. See, RTM suggests that in a world with a universal dividend, lending money with interest, it needs a serious rethink. If the interest rates are higher than the rate at which money is being created, well, you run into a situation where there's more money owed than actually exists. And that's a recipe for instability.
So it's all about striking that balance, making sure that the way we lend and borrow money doesn't undermine those core principles of shared ownership and fairness that RTM emphasizes.
Exactly. It's about aligning lending practices with the goals of a more equitable and sustainable economic system. RTM challenges us to rethink the relationship between debt, money creation, and that individual economic freedom we keep circling back to.
It's definitely a complex issue, but that's what's so great about RTM, right? It gives us these new lenses to see these complex systems in a new light.
Absolutely. It doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but it gives us the tools, the critical thinking skills to ask the right questions and imagine different possibilities.
It's a message of hope and responsibility. We all have a role to play in shaping the economic systems that will impact future generations. One thing that really stood out to me about RTM is how it connects money to something, I don't know, bigger. It's almost a social commentary or something. It's interesting how Laborde links this universal dividend to a sense of shared humanity.
It definitely goes deeper than your typical economic theory, that's for sure.
It does. It's like he's trying to redefine our relationship with money.
Yeah, the way Laborde sees it, this universal dividend isn't just about, handing out checks. It's about recognizing that everyone has inherent worth, that everyone has a right to not just participate in the economic system, but to actually benefit from it.
It's like saying, look, we're all in this together.
Exactly.
Right.
He even uses this metaphor of a citizen's condominium. We all share ownership and responsibility for how the whole system functions.
Instead of that, every man for himself mentality.
Right. It's about moving towards something more collaborative, more community-driven.
So does he suggest that this kind of shift, could it actually lead to more creativity, more innovation?
Absolutely. He argues that when people's basic needs are met, when they're not constantly worried about just surviving, they're free to, explore their passions, contribute in ways we might not even be able to imagine right now.
Right, because then it's not just about, can I make a living doing this? It's, can I make a difference?
Exactly. Think about something like the open source software movement. So much value being created there, and it's all happening outside those traditional models of, work and paychecks.
That's a great example. And it seems like that's what Laborde's getting at, a system that recognizes and supports all those valuable contributions that don't always fit neatly into, our current economic boxes.
Right. It's about expanding our definition of what's valuable beyond just the purely financial. Valuing people, valuing their potential as much as we value, profits and bottom lines.
It's a powerful concept, especially in today's world. It almost feels like Laborde is pushing for a system that encourages abundance by, acknowledging and supporting all different types of contributions.
Yes, and he leaves us with this really profound question. If you had the power, how would you design a monetary system that upholds those principles of fairness, of individual liberty? It's a call to action, a call to reimagine our relationship with money and to actively participate in creating a more just and equitable world for everyone.
It really has been an incredible deep dive. RTM, the relative theory of money, it's not just an academic exercise, is it? It's a roadmap, a challenge, a call to action, something to really sit with and think about.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe it'll spark some revolutionary ideas out there.
That's it for this deep dive. We hope you find it insightful, maybe even a little bit mind-bending. Until next time, keep those brain cells buzzing.